folks, and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Price. That is Zachary. And wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to something like that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that means we are live on YouTube at the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. If you want to watch the show and comment on the show and be a part of the show like all of our amazing commenters and viewers, you got to go over to that A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and then you'll be notified when we go live. At Charlie_Bros, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff Zach writes. We're also on Facebook, Twitch, and all this other stuff. You know where to find us. All right. Another interesting weekend of sports for me, Zach. I've filled people in on the saga of myself and the Texas Rangers. They're my boys. And they won one of the wildest World Series games I've ever seen on a walk-off homer. It was amazing. I was jumping around at 1 a.m., going crazy. Then they got their butt absolutely handed to them on Saturday. So that was a little bit of a swing of emotions there. And then Tennessee beats Kentucky, which was really nice. Went wire to wire. Obviously, that's going to be a big part of the show tonight that we're going to discuss, talk about. And then on Sunday, Will Levis goes out there, former Kentucky quarterback, and lights it up for the Tennessee Titans, which I don't think any of us saw coming. We clowned on him pretty hard on this show. And let me just say, I apologize for nothing. I will not back down. You cannot make me. I don't care. But I mean, as far as Levis goes, that was an impressive showing. I will say that much.
Yeah, it's kind of, we were talking before the show about how I'm a Charlotte Hornets fan, and Brendan Miller from Alabama was their draft pick. So I had to go from booing this man to cheering for this man. And you as a Titans fan, you're very much in the same situation. And I know with the Brendan Miller situation, he's played pretty well his first couple of games with the Hornets. I couldn't be happier. So I'm interested to know how you feel, if you're conflicted about this Will Levis game. Or, honestly, I'm still in like wait and see mode with the whole thing. Because
yeah, I mean, what is that meme that's like, oh no, the worst person you know made a good point. it's like that. Like I said, we clowned Levis like crazy, and I was beside myself with the Titans when they chose him. And yeah, it could very well be one of those situations where you light it up because there's no tape on him. It's totally fresh. They called the game in a completely different way than they really called it with Ryan Tannehill. It was kind of these like sort of building confidence, short passes and things like that. It was short passes, and then it was bombs over the top, and he landed a few of those, obviously 4 touchdown passes. And it was, I will say, legitimately, I was impressed. At the same time, Marcus Mariota had a slightly even better performance than Levis had in his debut, and ultimately he ended up not being the guy. So, you just never know. Now, if he can carry it over into more games, maybe I'll give up the ghost a little bit there and say that I was wrong. But just initially, sometimes you see that rookie spark in their very first game, but it just doesn't stick around. If he can make it stick around, I'll be very impressed, especially because the Titans offense is not exactly the most impressive set of dudes ever compiled. But that's pretty much my thought on it at the moment.
Yeah, well, hopefully for your sake, he can keep it going. Or for Titans fans, I know they've kind of been through it this season. Not to get too much on the Titans, but it's been a rough go there with all the rumors and sending off franchise favorite players, and
he made the game watchable, which that was the first time that's happened in 2 years or something. And so I'll give him credit for that.
You know what's funny is that as we get into this here in a minute, Devin Leary on Saturday night looked like what I think everybody thought Will Levis would look like against Tennessee last season.
Yeah.
When Will Levis was just a total dud out there. I think a lot of that was obviously his offensive coordinator that seemed like he had no business being in the SEC or even being an offensive coordinator, had no idea how to actually use Will Levis's arm talent against Tennessee's secondary that struggled at times last season. But Liam Cohen, to his credit, he schemed up some stuff for Kentucky on Saturday night that really gave the Vols defense some trouble. And just Tim Banks, the game plan he had was not the one for perfect one for Liam Cohen's game plan.
Yeah, not Banks' finest work there. But honestly, on that note, let's get into it and talk about that Kentucky game. Tennessee, I want to say squeaks by, but they really didn't. I mean, they led the entire game and ultimately even covered the spread. But let's break it down right after I tell you about our first great sponsor, Zen Sports. It is football season, and it's time to switch to Zen Sports, the fastest growing sportsbook in Tennessee, changing the bonus game with their cash rewards program. When you sign up for Zen Sports with code A2ZTN, earn a welcome bonus that gives you 5% cash back on your total betting volume for your first 15 days of betting. It's an insane offer, but there's more. If you have friends who bet on sports, share your Zen Sports referral bonus code with them, and you will earn 3% of their betting volume for their first 6 months of betting on Zen Sports, and there is no cap on how much you can earn. So what are you waiting for? Stop wasting time and money on other sports books when you could be earning real cash rewards with Zen Sports. Download today on the App Store or at zensports.com, and your wallet will thank you later. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. That is Zen Sports, code A2ZTN, ATOZTN. Zen Sports. Appreciate them. Now to that Kentucky game. It was an interesting one for a whole bevy of reasons. First and foremost, I think the thing that it comes to mind for everybody is the way that Tennessee's offense played. Joe Milton, really good performance. And I'll start here for me personally. Good friend had a wedding on Saturday night at 5 p.m. that I had to go to. And so that's where I was. And we left that wedding with about maybe 8 minutes left in the game. And I got to listen to good old Bob call the game on the radio on the way back home. You wouldn't know that Tennessee, made some really nice plays down the stretch with the way that he called the game, but he did call the game adequately. But so I will
say on that note real quick, it was fun, me, you, and Austin in our group text, Austin and I trying to describe to you what was happening. And I can only imagine what you were picturing on half of these plays and sequences that we were throwing out there, because it was Tennessee led the whole game, but it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions throughout that game, depending on, if Kentucky had the ball, the situation. Yeah. It was I can only imagine being in your shoes.
It was interesting because I saw everything that y'all said. I heard the end of Bob's call and Tennessee wins. So that's all I had really taken in of like play by play of this game. I had seen essentially no video. At one point, the service was really bad. We were out in the middle of nowhere for that wedding. The service was bad, and there were like a couple of spots where I could get a couple of spots where I couldn't. And at one point, I refreshed and actually got it, and it said Tyler Barron had caught a pass, and it was Keaton, I guess.
Yeah.
And they had like mixed him up. So I was all over the place as far as this goes. Now, the thing that I was going to mention is that I saw a bunch of tweets. I don't know that it was a ton, but I saw some. Twitter like populated them for me on that For You feed about how, why don't we bring Nico in? This is terrible of Milton. Oh my gosh, I can't believe Milton. And then I watched the game the next day. I watched it in its entirety. And got to pause and kind of look at everything pretty closely. Milton played really well. I don't know. Maybe it's easy for me to say that because I wasn't watching it in the moment at the time. And you have hindsight 2020 on some stuff. Like there was a play that a lot of people pointed out where they were like, he missed a guy that was wide open. Well, I got to just look at it on Twitter and I was like, honestly, he got. Do you know the one I'm talking about? A lot of people posted it,
I
and
I can't remember exactly.
he was going through his progressions. You could watch him turn his head, but his passing play, he goes 1, 2, and then the pass rush is in his face, and the one that was open was 3, but he didn't have enough time to get to 3. And I don't the picture of it I saw didn't have like a timestamp on it. I don't know exactly when it was in the game. But I looked at it and people were like, "Can you believe this guy was wide open? Milton didn't hit him." And I was like, he had a guy 4 inches from his face when he got to that third read there. And so, like I said, it was hindsight 2020. I was watching it with kind of like easy eyes where I wasn't stressed out, freaking out. But yeah, it just I thought I even texted you guys this. I was like, I'm only at halftime. Milton played like very nicely in this game. Did it feel that way live?
I think at times with the way, the offense struggling in the red zone, I think you kind of default to, is this on the quarterback? In the moment, you might do that. I never really felt that way necessarily. For me, the red zone issues are a team issue, a play calling
Yeah.
issue. One time in the red zone, I can't remember if it was in the second half, it was just a disastrous set of play calls. And Josh Heupel, on the Josh Heupel show, to his credit, when he was reviewing the game with Bob Kessling, kind of noted that it was like this was just not a good set of play calls for the looks that the defense that Kentucky came out there with, and it just wasn't what they were expecting from Kentucky. So I think it's one of those things where you can scream about the play calls, but it's kind of like in baseball when a good hitter is going against a good pitcher and you get struck out. Like sometimes you just got to tip your hat. He got you on that one. And Kentucky has good coaches as well. Like Mark Stoops and Brad White, that defense is always pretty tough to play. I know Tennessee's carved them up the last couple of years, but they've had some really nice games and game plans, and they just kind of got them on that series. So I never really felt that in the moment with him, because I thought, watching it live, I was like, these are some really nice plays that Joe Milton's making. He's moving out of the pocket. He's stepping up. He's sensing the pressure. He's eluding it. He's taking off when he needs to, picking up first downs. We saw him throwing on the run. The one clip that's went around Twitter of him kind of directing Dante Thornton back to the middle of the field, throwing across his body, barely out of the reach of the defender to really where only Thornton could catch it. So many levels to that. That's great. The escapability of Milton, the recognition of that play, and to get Thornton back to the middle of the field, and the chemistry that I think you're starting to see between those two, which is something we've kind of mentioned a little bit, that was going to take some time to build. Starting to get there a little bit. So no, I thought watching it live, he played pretty well. I mean, he wasn't missing many passes. You didn't really realize that till the end of the game, though, because when those drives kind of stalled out, sometimes it was because they ran the ball a couple of times early and didn't pick up anything, and especially in the red zone. And that's not necessarily on Milton at all. I don't know, who that's on as far as keeping that or handing it off or deciding to throw or not. But I thought it was one of the best games he's played. The game against Alabama the previous week was also a pretty well played game, except for the second half when kind of things went haywire from a play calling standpoint, I think. But we saw Milton do some really good things in that game too. And yeah, I think it all just comes down to the fact that he's healthy now. The guy ran for 25 yards the month of September, or most of the month of September, because he was banged up and just didn't tell anybody. So I think that's something else that people haven't really put into context.
Yeah, Darren in the comments mentions he's been banged up, but he's looking much healthier. I think that's exactly right. And Elias mentioned my state of mind at that wedding. He said, so you had no consistent idea of down and distance, constantly had to wait to find out if there was some crushing reveal of a fumble. That really is the worst, where you're waiting, and then it's like interception, and you're
and they were very just emotional texts from us as well.
Oh, yeah.
Us going through the moment. So you really don't know the tone of the game at all. You probably did not realize that Tennessee was pretty much in control of that game. There's a few moments where you're like, this could go south. I think Austin at one point was like, they're going to lose this game, when things kind of started in that one. I think it was the second or third quarter, maybe, when things kind of got a little shaky there. Yeah. At that point, you're like, yeah, they got to score. They haven't shown that they can score. But you saw the first, I tweeted this out, the play to Chaz Nimrod, I'm sure you saw, where the defender kind of tripped up a little bit, but Nimrod already had him beat. It's like, that's the type of play we saw last season to Hyatt over and over and over. And we saw Milton make those plays in the Orange Bowl. It feels like we've been waiting on that exact play, that type of touchdown all season. And that touchdown, when it happened, was such a relief. It felt like that's what we've been waiting to see from this offense every single week. And it only happened once in that game, but just the fact that it happened on the road against a good defense, it was a huge relief. It felt like, because it's like they still have that in the bag. It's still there. It just hasn't worked out so far this year for whatever reason.
Yeah, it just felt like the pieces were clicking into place a little bit more. The thing that's glaring when you go back and watch is the red zone offense. And it's like there's just some sort of block there where for them to score a touchdown, they have to be at the 20 or further out.
A running back has to break off a run, because it seems like that's all the play calling is allowing them to do. And I'm not sure why that's the situation, because the only time that Milton's really got in trouble and thrown some interceptions this season has been when he's kind of tried to throw the ball 25 yards down the field, and there's been a safety kind of lurking that he didn't recognize. I feel like when you condense the field, because he's got such a great arm that he can fit it into those tight windows, like we saw that pass to Brew McCoy in the Orange Bowl against Clemson. That window was very narrow. I think it was the first touchdown of the game against Clemson. He can do that in the red zone. Like, you've got to trust him to make those throws. And you've still got, I know you don't have Brew out there, but you've got Jacob Bourne, you've got McCallan Castles. You've got some guys that can make those plays. Just let it fly. Let him go out there and make something happen. You've got to start scoring. You're not going to beat Missouri or Georgia, I don't think, if you don't, score on those red zone opportunities.
100%. And I hope that the trust is being built, because it has been clear in weeks leading up to this that there was major distrust of just Heupel kind of going, I could call these plays and they're not going to go the way that we want, that kind of distrust. And hopefully that's being dispelled, because just when you see what one was glaring where I went, oh, that's different. There's your change right there. And it was essentially the game-winning play. 2-ish minutes left, 3rd and 7, maybe. You got to get it, and the game's essentially over. And Milton runs, and so just good blocking, and he makes a good decision, and he runs, and that was good. I mean, he's super athletic. Not a play that I was surprised that he could make, but he slid down inbounds. And I looked at that piece of that, and I went, oh, that's situational awareness. Look at that. That's something that we had just, been dogging him about all season. And finally, he shows it in the biggest spot in a road game where he makes a great play. And you just go, oh, there it is. It's all together. He's putting it all together. That's the definition of putting it all together, is that he made the play, had the situational awareness, did the whole thing wrapped up in one nice little play there. And that was incredible to see. I just was really impressed as far as that goes. And hopefully that tears down some of those walls with the distrust or whatever was going on there. And that they did just let it fly, let it go. The dudes are there. And maybe, I heard in some of the analysis of this game, this was some that I saw before I watched, and then it kind of made sense when I did watch it. Thornton going to the outside instead of being in the slot, maybe more comfortable there, and maybe that's a piece clicking into place. Maybe he still has to show. He had too many drops for me to just be all in on Dante Thornton already. But and he, by the way, he was watching our Austin and Crump on the live show and commented on the live show after the game from the locker room. I think maybe he'll watch this. And if you do, what's up? Good to see you. I hope that is that piece clicking into place. That would be amazing, because he just has the physicality. It's all been there. It just hasn't glued together. And maybe this will be the start of that. And what a great time for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that goes hand in hand with his comment from Rado22 here that talks about Milton only starting 16 games, or however many games in his college career from Michigan into, his time at Tennessee. I do think there is something to that, because there's no substitute for game reps and playing in an offense for a whole season. In Michigan, it was weird. He had Pep Hamilton that brought him in, then he left after one season. He had a COVID year. It was just a not a great situation. You come in 2021, you get hurt, you lose the job, or Hendon Hooker takes the job. And Hendon Hooker, it's a 7-6 season. They go 7-6 this year. You're not too happy, but Hendon Hooker kind of had the benefit of that being, after all the NCAA stuff, nobody's expectations were that high. He got to go through some growing pains. Hendon Hooker was good in 2021, but he wasn't 2022 Hendon Hooker by any means, and neither were the receivers on the team. And he got that whole year to really build chemistry with Jalen Hyatt, Ramel Keaton, and Cedric Tillman. And some of the other guys that were there, had stepped up, fortunately, in those roles that season. But going into 2022, he just had so much more of a base to work with, a knowledge of the offense, being in it for a whole season and playing against Alabama and Georgia and some of these tough games in Florida. 2022 came, it wasn't brand new to him. So even though Joe Milton's been around the program for 2 years before this season, it hadn't been his offense where he's going out there and actually playing in these games every single week. When he was coming in games, it was mop-up duty when the outcome had already been determined, except for the Ole Miss game. That was the only time that he was really thrown into a pressure situation. So it was going to always take a little bit of time, especially with all the new pieces that this offense has. And you take Brew McCoy out of the equation, who was kind of like a Jawan Jennings type guy that you could go to in those moments because you knew that if you got him the ball in like a little 5-yard route, it's a good chance he's going to create another 5 yards and get a first down just with the physicality he plays with. So that safety net was gone. You're moving guys around, trying to figure out like a Dante Thornton. Where does he belong? He hasn't been in this offense either. He's a junior coming in from Oregon, but hadn't played a ton there either. 300 or 400 receiving yards his sophomore season. Having to learn this offense, where to be with Joe Milton, who's learning how to be the starter, along with a lot of these other guys that are learning how to be starters. I think it was always going to take some time. It's not an excuse for drops or some of the plays that have been made, but it's understandable that it was never going to be perfect and just like it was last season. I think that was an expectation that fans and ourselves probably set and just kind of expected because of the way Joe Milton played in that Orange Bowl. But it was a different team, different players. A lot of those guys are gone. I think now we're kind of starting to see them get more comfortable with each other. They're still having to play a little bit different just because defenses are playing them so much different, trying to take away the pass. I mean, they're saying beat us with the run. Every team, I think A&M, Alabama, Kentucky, they all have good run defenses, and I think they all think we're the team that can stop them in the run. We like our chances better there than we do over the top. And I think that's probably a good strategy because you are holding Tennessee to fewer points this season, which improves your chances of beating them. You're making them, burn more clock on some of these possessions. But Tennessee's showing that they can still create some explosive plays using the run game. And ultimately, Tennessee's 6-2. Like, they haven't been 6-2 after 8 games since 2006. That's 17 years since they've had, besides last season. Outside of last season, it's their best start through 8 games since Philip Fulmer was in town. And you go on social media, and I mean, I've even seen people that are like, I'm out on Josh Heupel. This guy was a 1-year wonder. I'm like, this is the craziest talk I've ever heard. Like, how are you spoiled after one season when we lived through Derek Dooley and Butch Jones and freaking Jeremy Pruitt and 3-7 and 4-8 and all these disastrous games and the laughing stock of college football, and you're mad about 6-2 because they lost to Florida and Alabama on the road with a new team? I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
You ever heard that Louis C.K. bit where he's talking? It was like old. He's talking about Wi-Fi on planes, and he's like, "There was Wi-Fi on this plane. I was on the internet in the sky, and then it went out." And the guy beside me goes, "Oh, what the hell? What? I wanted to use this." And Louis C.K.'s like, "How quickly does the world owe you something? This is the newest, most amazing technology we've ever seen, and suddenly you're pissed off that it's not working." I think Tennessee fans, me included,
I mean, yeah, we've been there.
Throw my hat right in that ring.
We've texted frustrated about plays and games and stuff. Yes, we have.
I mean, you get that taste of the glory, and you go every year. Let's do that every single year. No more of this 7-5, 5-7 garbage. We're not doing that anymore. It's about, this 8-0 in October like last year, 6-2 in October. No more of that Butch Jones nonsense.
It's kind of a
And
it's kind of a paradox because it's what we do in this world. You kind of by nature compare things, you compare seasons, you compare teams, but it is the absolute worst and dumbest thing that we can do. Compare Tennessee's progress to the way Georgia did it, or the way Alabama did it, or the way Florida's done whatever they've done, or any other program. Like every situation's so unique. There's so many different factors. I mean, there's so many moving parts with coaching staffs, a roster of over 100 players, support staff, recruiting, uh, where you recruit from, all these factors that go into building a championship program, that there is no one blueprint to do it. And you look at Georgia and you're like, why can't we do it as quick as Kirby did? He was in the championship in the second season. It's like, well, Mark Richt had them winning 10 games a year almost for 15 years. Tennessee had not won 10 games in any year for
yeah,
15 years. So
I believe they won 3 games the year before Heupel came in. Little bit of a different situation there. But I thought it was a great point. I think it was Aaron Torres, I want to say, is just kind of a media personality at like Fox or something. But he made the point that it's gonna go completely unnoticed, essentially. But Josh Heupel, the coaching job that he's done to take a team that blew every team away through the air last year and just turn that style completely on its head. They still tempo, like the foundation is still there, but he turned that completely on its head, and suddenly Tennessee's a hard nosed run first team, and they're not just. It's not like they're just trying to do that. Like Jeremy Pruitt tried to run a football team like Saban did, and he sucked. And here Heupel is not just trying to be a hard-nosed run for his team. He's running for 250 yards on you, and he's running all over you, and he's got a trio of running backs that are killing everybody. And it's really, I thought it was a great point by Torres, and deserves to be pointed out, and it probably is going to be ignored by the people that just want to be mad about the coach or whatever. But it's been nice.
yeah, it's funny because they're playing pretty good defense this year too, and I know they carved up the secondary a little bit on Saturday night. They still only scored 27 points, which on the road in the SEC, not too bad, especially when you give up 372 passing yards. But look, I mean, Kentucky had a really good game plan. It wasn't what Tennessee was expecting, kind of like South Carolina last season, but they were able to limit the damage. Like Heupel said, in his post game and interviews and on the Josh Heupel show, they hit him with a lot of play action stuff that they just weren't ready for. Tennessee was playing a lot of young guys, guys like Elijah Herring and T-Lander and Arian Carter. They're out there on the field and they're having to learn. They're going through some growing pains, learning how to play some of those. I mean, Arian Carter kind of looked out of place a few times, but the guy's was a high school running back. He's a true freshman out there. He's going to be a really good player for Tennessee, especially once he figures it all out. You just throw all that into the mix, and it was a tough game for Tennessee's defense. The pass rush wasn't really getting home. There were some holds that once again were not getting called a few times that Tyler Barron definitely could have got to Devin Leary if his neck wasn't being bent backwards by an offensive lineman whom he had already beaten. It's happened several times. And, it is what it is. That happens. There might have been a few of those that Tennessee got away with that we ignored. It's been frustrating as of late, but that factored into not getting home a couple of times. And that pass rush isn't getting home, it's hard for that secondary, and especially you're without your best corner. All of a sudden, Kamal Hadden, who'd been having such an amazing year, one of the best players in the SEC, you lose him for the season. Danico Slaughter's not really a good cover guy down the field, so they beat him a couple of times. All that stuff kind of added up to a tough night for the defense, but all in all, you still only gave up 27 points. And you talk about that with the rushing offense. It's like this team this season is winning games the way Jeremy Pruitt wanted to.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, Pruitt could have only dreamed of winning games the way that Heupel has won this season. That's a great point. Well, and let's talk. You mentioned it there. I want to talk about the defense and then also about those penalties. So the penalties. So much talk about that after that game, and I was one of the people griping on it. And let's talk about it in this next segment. But I did want to mention there were just a couple of quick comments here right before we go out. Yeah, here it is. Elias, I do like this point. He says, "Can we take a minute to chuckle at all the pundits that kept insisting that Shane Beamer compares in any way favorably to Heupel?" I mean, to Beamer, like people are talking right now, like South Carolina better not lose to Jacksonville State. Oof, that's tough spot to be in, boy.
It's
When
crazy because
they're
I think Spencer Rattler was really keeping that guy afloat. I don't know what
it
happened.
was
We talked about it. You can go back and watch it about the sign stealing stuff at Michigan and how much South Carolina might have known that night against Tennessee last year. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But Spencer Rattler has played well, through spurts, and really without him playing kind of out of his mind a few games. Boy, Shane Beamer's record's looking pretty rough at South Carolina. There's some games they don't win last season. They're 2-6 this year. The recruits are probably going to start decommitting soon if you don't figure it out fast, because you're in year 3. You can't go 2-6 in year 3 when you're supposed to take a step forward. You just can't. So that's I don't know. I don't know where you go from there if you're South Carolina. It's a tough spot to be in for those fans.
Yeah, it's not great. But yeah, we're laughing all the way to the bank over here.
Absolutely. Shane Beamer is one of the more just. I don't know the guy. I mean, I don't have anything personal against him. He might be a great guy. I have no idea. But he is one of the stranger guys that exhibits some toddler-like behavior. I don't.
Yeah.
He has the entitled thing down pat. Like, you can tell he is the son of a legendary head coach who thinks he's owed a little bit more than he probably deserves.
It's deeply unlikable. But then just Titans YouTuber says, "Does everyone like Josh Heupel? I like him. There's been a couple of times I've questioned him."
I mean,
just to our point there about him switching to the run and kind of the impressive thing that he's done. Like, my biggest things have been situational. Shotgun on 4th down, hate it. Throw it in the trash, shoot it straight into the sun. I can't stand it. Like in that Kentucky game, they were running down the clock on that final drive, and on one of the plays they snapped the ball 15 seconds left, and I was like, why did we do that? And then you were mitigating, like 10 seconds ended up coming in handy right at the end of the game. Now, thankfully, Kentucky screwed themselves out of 10 seconds there, and that was good. But I was like, why didn't we just run it down?
Yeah, you're talking about where they huddled forever and then went up to the line and then snapped it.
You could have just huddled for another 15 seconds.
But that's one of those things where you don't know, is that a quarterback center communication thing on the field that happened that maybe Heupel's like, yeah, that's not the way we coach that, or was it Heupel? I don't know. I like Heupel personally to that question. I like Josh Heupel, like his persona, the way that he interacts in these interviews, and just the way you can tell that he talks to people and everything you've heard about the guy. I genuinely think he's a very likable person that people would enjoy just being around. He's not one of those people that I think you'd feel at ease around him. Like a Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. Some of these guys, it's not their success. You just kind of feel like on the edge around them. And Heupel seems like the type of person that puts you at ease. As far as the decisions, I don't think there's a head coach, period, that you haven't questioned their decisions. Nick Saban made some dumb decisions at the end of Tennessee, Alabama last season. Steve Spurrier, one of the greatest college football coaches of all time, that 2013 South Carolina game, made some dumb decisions that helped South Carolina lose that game. Called like 3 consecutive timeouts or something absurd. Like, good coaches make bad decisions.
He never lost to Peyton Manning, and he lost to Butch Jones twice. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens to the best of them. Right?
The thing about Heupel is sometimes you've heard him. We saw the little interaction at the end of the Texas A&M game where he said, I almost effed it up or something like that. And he's made comments about like, I don't think that was probably the right decision there. Like, he's not this whole, I'm the smartest guy in the room and every decision I make is infallible and it just didn't work out. Kind of like Jeremy Pruitt or Mike Vrabel, one of Charlie's favorite coaches. Like, you don't get that vibe with Heupel at all. So I do like that aspect of Heupel.
Yeah, Vrabel's got to cut it out. Okay, well, let's move on to just talking a little bit about the defense, but then also those penalties too in this next segment. Right after I tell you about HelloFresh. our newest sponsor to the show. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And when it comes to options with HelloFresh, more is more. That's why HelloFresh's menu includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from every week. A busy fall schedule doesn't always leave you with time to spare, and with HelloFresh, you don't need to spend all evening in the kitchen to whip up a wholesome meal. With their quick and easy recipes and 15-minute meals, you can get a tasty dinner on the table in less time than it takes to get takeout or delivery. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Vols and use code 50Vols for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. That is HelloFresh.com/50Vols and code 50Vols for 50% off and then 15% off your next 2 months. HelloFresh, that is America's #1 meal kit. Go get your hands on some. HelloFresh. So with the defense here, you can look at it charitably. And this is like maybe I don't want Willie Martinez fired. Maybe Tim Banks did this on purpose, where they're kind of looking at the realistic situation of their personnel. And they're going, you're not going to beat us on the ground. You're not going to bomb it on us. But we'll give you that medium, the medium portion of the field. That's the charitable version. Or you can burn them down and go like, they got torched and they stink and these guys suck. But I think ultimately the truth is probably leaning much more towards that they realize the players that they have. And that's what they're doing. And then probably why Leary was able to toss it around the yard like he did. But my main criticism so far with the defense, I think, is that why are they always just playing the senior guys when you've got these young dudes in the wings? They're just not ready? Because you're playing senior guys that can't handle it. Why not play young guys that are your future who can't handle it?
Well,
is that stupid?
That's mostly just in the secondary, though.
In the second, that's true. I should have mentioned that in the secondary.
And yeah, I do think that's something that's been talked about with Tim Banks, that he very much prefers seniority. I think Willie Martinez is probably on board with that. It seems like it might be a flaw because I think there's some of these guys that they weren't super highly rated recruits. They're not going to be quite as talented or as athletic, but I think he just trusts that they know the system. I think on Saturday night, my biggest criticism of Tim Banks was, okay, Kentucky had this good game plan that maybe you weren't expecting. They're carving up your zone coverage. Where's the adjustment? Like, it never felt like the adjustment was made. And I know the pass rush has to get home, and they did start getting home more in the second half. Omar Norman-Lott had a huge sack, came through on that play. But it wasn't what we've seen at various times throughout the season, early in the season, in some of these games where they've just been dominant. Kentucky's right tackle, to his credit, held up pretty well against James Pierce on some of those pass rushing downs. I'm not sure about the secondary deal with the younger players. I question it too, because it's like, if these guys can play, they can play. We saw Alontae Taylor out there as a young guy, and he was one of the best, DBs on the field for you. If you think you've got that type of talent, and Alontae Taylor's an NFL talent, not every DB that comes out is going to be that comes in is going to be that talented. But you got to put them out there and see what you got, it feels like, in some of these situations. Yeah. If they're more talented, then let them go out there and play. I mean, you're going to have to learn from some of your mistakes, but the only way to learn from it is to be out there and actually make that mistake. It's easy to see a mistake that Danico Slaughter makes on tape if you're a young guy, but unless you're out there and you actually are in that moment and you know what it feels like and what you should have been doing, it's just so much different when you actually make the mistake and you can immediately learn from it and kind of self-correct.
I agree. I don't think that's going to change this season, though. And no. And Timothy says they're inconsistent, and Jason says, I don't know. I honestly just don't see much improvement in the secondary. They get exposed when pass rush doesn't show up. Yeah, I mean, I agree. When they get put on a little bit of an island and the pass rush doesn't get home, they look exactly like they looked last year. It just like that, the way that Leary was tossing around. It was super reminiscent of like that Florida game where Anthony Richardson just threw for like 400 yards against you. And you just go, it's so, like, it's easy. Of course, if you give him that much time and we're covering him soft like that, of course I could make some of those throws. You end up looking at it kind of like that. And it's tough. But
did you notice the one play where Roman Harrison ended up in coverage, like out in the flat or something, or not really out in the flat?
Someone with
maybe
Eric
to the
Beasley.
boundary. Well, that's pretty common, but there's at one point Roman Harrison, one of your pass rushers, is in coverage for some reason, and
what is that?
That's not a recipe for success. So I don't know what went on there. I would hope that's not by design.
Well, I was thinking there was one in particular. Beasley got he was in coverage, and it was just, it was just
he hasn't been great. Like Keenan, that's where you miss Keenan Peely a lot, and he's not going to play in this UConn game because you saw in that Virginia game that guy he's a smart guy, but just he was much better in coverage than some of the linebackers that Tennessee's had, and really. The way a lot of this offense is played in college football, you've got to have a linebacker that has some coverage skills. And as good as Beasley's been, that's just not been his strong suit, just like it wasn't Jeremy Banks' strong suit. And Keenan Peely was going to be able to deliver that. And I think it's obviously impacted the defense quite a bit, depth-wise and just experience on the field. Just Keenan Peely, to me, was like an NFL-type player. And I don't know, if he comes back next season. He's got some decisions to make, but I'm not going to say he's going to be like a starter or a star guy in the NFL, but he'd be on a roster. I think he has, the awareness and the ability to play at the next level.
I'm starting to get worried that he might be out for the season.
Yeah, I think his injury
only play
was
enough to get a red shirt or Because the way, Heupel, I believe you even said it there, but Heupel in his press conference today said Keenan's going to have to make decisions for himself and for his family.
Yeah.
He put it that way today, and I was like, oh no,
pretty severe injury. So maybe one of those that could have been deemed season-ending at some point. But Heupel doesn't even like to throw that out there.
I hope not, because he was just really good, and I think a really good pickup that could ultimately end up going to waste if he doesn't come back and doesn't.
I think he could have helped a lot on some of these quarterback scrambles and some of these plays where Tennessee's got burnt and given up kind of big yardage in these 3rd and long situations. I mean, they almost gave up. I mean, they were in like 3rd and 21 on that first 4th down, and Kentucky punted that time, which surprised me. And the next time they went for it, they didn't get it. And rewatching that, Ray Davis was pretty close to that first down marker. I'm shocked that they didn't try to challenge that. You know how Tennessee's luck kind of goes with some of those challenges, though the one on the sideline catch did go in Tennessee's favor for once, which kind of shocked me.
Well, let's talk about that. So the officiating in this game, and at this point, it's really, I would say, all 3 SEC road games so far have an interesting theme to them. I believe the stat that I saw is in the 3 SEC road games, there has been 1 post-snap penalty called on Tennessee's opponent. 1 in 3 SEC road games. That being, a holding, a pass interference, so whatever that may be. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't fact check, but we know for sure that's true about Alabama and Kentucky, because in those 2 games, there was 0 post-snap penalties.
Yeah, I don't know about the Florida game. Just sitting here looking at the box score, they had 5 penalties for only 30 yards, so that would indicate mostly pre-snap penalties, though that and offsides could be in there perhaps, which I don't know how you would deem that necessarily, but I guess that would be procedural. But nothing. There clearly was no holding or pass interference called on Florida.
Yeah. No 15 yards per, 10 yards per. And so, there's been kind of a feeling of like, what's going on here? And I think Tennessee fans really felt the need to speak up because they won this one, and there was some really glaring holds that were missed, PIs that were missed, some things like that, where you just look and you go like, what are we doing here? If we're not going to play within the bounds of the rules, what are we doing? And we're not complaining because clearly it didn't cost Tennessee to lose. They won, but what are we doing? I think it was probably kind of smart of Tennessee fans to wait until after a win where you really saw it there, where you can point this out, because it doesn't make you seem like a sore loser. But
No, we were pretty loud about it after the Alabama game. To be
oh,
fair.
for sure, yeah. But I said with that Alabama game, the refs didn't make you give up 27 points in the second
Fair,
half.
fair.
And that is not the refs' fault, even though there were some really, really egregious non-calls and things like that in that game. But there's kind of been this. Is there a little bit of a conspiracy against Heupel or something like this? I think the one that I could subscribe to. I don't like the conspiracy things because here's the deal: officiating sucks in all of college football. The officiating blows.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there could be an element of this where Heupel is not, in the ref's ear enough. You really see that a lot in basketball. Like a lot, the refs sometimes will be deferential to coaches that just ride them in games. And there's varying levels of success to that, and maybe, but I see him get after the refs, right?
Yeah, and I mean, last year when he got on to the ref in the Orange Bowl for standing over the ball several times and not snapping it, they hit him with a sideline penalty, and
right,
they always have that in their back pocket that can really hurt you in some crucial situations. So I don't know if there's something to that or not. I know that you hear these opposing fan bases kind of throwing shade at Tennessee fans about complaining. The fact of the matter is that Kentucky is one of the most penalized teams in the country, and there wasn't one post-snap penalty called on them. And have same thing against Alabama, and pretty much the same thing against Florida. Yet Tennessee's getting called for all these penalties. You're not saying that Tennessee's penalties are egregious or egregiously called. They're correctly called, right? Like, except for that one hold on Gabe Judy Lally against Alabama that I thought was pretty ticky-tack. For the most part, they're penalties that they're committing. Some of them dumb penalties. It's like they're sure not missing those on Tennessee, though, are they? Like, the only penalty I've seen really missed was that face mask on Tyler Barron against Texas A&M. And you live with that to some extent. It's frustrating in the moment, but you do live with there are going to be missed calls, and more often than not, you're going to get the benefit of some of those too. And I'm sure there's been a time or two that you could probably point out, besides like the Tyler Barron thing, that Tennessee's got away with something. But when it's this like blatant that Tennessee's getting 8, 9, 10 penalties a game and their opponents just magically playing clean all of a sudden, when that hasn't been the characteristic of those teams the entire season, it just doesn't add up. And it's like, why? Why is this happening? I'm with you. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I don't really buy into that at all. But it's very frustrating to see happen. And you can't it just can't keep happening. And Heupel can't say that much in these post-game pressers. Like, I remember when Lane Kiffin was loudly complaining after the 2009 Alabama game and got reprimanded by the SEC. I think it was Mike Slav, might have been the commissioner back then. It was like, if you say something else, you're going to be suspended. Like, you don't want to dance that line and get in that headline at all because it looks bad. Other programs use that against you, like you're complaining and whining. You could hurt your team by being suspended. It becomes a whole story. You don't want that. There's no benefit to Josh Heupel going off on officials after the games. I think his silence and his no comment says all that needs to be said. And it's better than just brushing it off and saying, well, that's why we didn't lose the game or something cliche like that. So I don't really know what else he can do. And that's the frustrating part because there's no transparency. There's absolutely zero transparency with any of this. They submit plays. We, media, fans, you never really hear anything about it. You don't know if there's a resolution or what's being said. The SEC just has no transparency, and they rarely ever discipline an SEC officiating crew. I think that happened as well in 2009, where they called some penalties that shouldn't have been penalties, and they suspended one crew for a couple of games. It's like the only time you can ever remember that happening.
It has to happen at some point. Elias and Titans YouTuber here, they're saying it'd be interesting if the SEC were to publish officiating grades for individual games, and the Titans said they should refs should be held accountable. They can change the whole game. Yeah, there needs to be that. There has to be at some point for this to improve. And it just perpetually seems like, and I think you would get this take out of the fan base of any given SEC team. At some point, when are we going to reckon with this? Like, come on, Sankey. Come on. Like there's again, I don't think there's a conspiracy here because the officiating in the SEC as a whole just blows. If it didn't suck across the board like it does, I might feel differently. Because, yeah, I mean, the officiating in the last two games for Tennessee, it's been a little coincidental for sure, in a way that makes me raise my eyebrows and kind of go, huh? Really? Really? No post-snap penalties in 2 full games from a couple of teams that get penalized a lot. Really? But it's at the same time, the officiating just sucks out loud across the entire league, and there's never any reckoning with it at all from Sankey. And the coaches can't talk, oh, we're going to get fined. Why would that's always been the
That
dumbest
is
thing
absurd.
to me. You should be able to take the officiating to task. We're allowed to take the coach to task when he screws up. That's the entire point of the media. But we can't take the friggin' the officiating crews and rake them over the coals when they stink. I've always thought that's stupid at everything. But it's just terrible. And I think every SEC school probably feels this just in these last couple of weeks. It's been particularly egregious for Tennessee, and there needs to be something.
If there is some sort of conspiracy, the only thing I would even begin to buy into would be the gambling aspect anyways. And that could be a very real thing to some extent across all of sports. That's not a Tennessee thing. That's everything. Like there's a human element to these games, and there's a lot of money riding on every single thing. And if you think somebody's not trying to tilt, I mean, it's happened before. It's happened plenty. We've seen NBA refs. I mean, that whole scandal with whatever the guy's name was back in the mid 2000s. I mean, these things do happen. People do try to get to them. I think there's a lot of refs with a lot of integrity. Most of them, the majority of them, but we're all humans. If you think that somebody can't be gotten to, like you're kind of foolish. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that's what's going on by any means, but that would be the only thing that I would remotely buy into. I don't think there's some sort of conspiracy about keeping Tennessee down or wanting Alabama to win. I don't think that's it at all. I think the SEC likes the parity. In fact, I think they want more parity. I think they want to see a South Carolina or a Tennessee or an Ole Miss kind of rise to the occasion and give Georgia and Alabama some competition there.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't know what it is, but come on. At a certain point, we got to do something. But they're not gonna. Sankey's not gonna do it. He's making money hand over fist. So why would he need?
It's like the pass interference thing.
Anything?
Like nobody even knows what pass interference has become like targeting at this point, where nobody really knows what constitutes pass interference. It's muddied it so much in my mind that I can't even watch a play objectively and really think about should this be pass interference or not, because it's such a moving target. You really don't know, and it's just, well, did they throw the flag or not? Did they get that one or not? That's really what it's come down to.
Yeah, everything is PI and nothing is PI all at the same time. I have no, I could not agree more. It's ridiculous. But anything else, Zach, about that game before we move on to a little bit of basketball? Had a top 10 amazing exhibition game with the Vol basketball team. But anything about football left that you think we might have missed?
No, I mean, it's just Kentucky is like we are to Florida. No matter what,
Cursed.
Tennessee finds a way. And did you see any of the Kentucky like sports radio stuff? Those guys,
oh yeah,
lost their minds.
I listened to it.
They couldn't handle it. And look, I know we're the same way against Florida. I don't think we don't lose our minds in that aspect. We kind of resigned ourselves to, well, there's another one in the swamp that didn't go our way. But it's always amazing to watch those guys act surprised that they've lost to Tennessee yet again.
So I listened, as I always do. It is a tradition unlike any other, listening to Kentucky Sports Radio with Matt Jones after any catastrophic Kentucky loss. But obviously, it's a beautiful cherry on top when it's to Tennessee. There's been some really good ones after some basketball games in recent years, and some really good ones after football games. But this one, Man, it was just kind of sad. They really it was a lot of just being resigned to, like, we're just kind of a poverty program, and we're just never, like, we got to just concentrate on basketball because we're never going to win the big one in football. It was just a lot of that, and they were just kind of talking circles around, like, how can we justify $8 million for Stoops when he can never win an actually big game and all these things. And then, I mean, Matt Jones, I think some people put it on Twitter, there's a clip where he just is like, who do we think we are? Who do we think we are? We're Kentucky. We're not Alabama. We're not Georgia. We're Kentucky. And, like, there's a clip of him saying that in that show, and I was like, yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, you know,
Mark Stoops definitely hit the Kentucky ceiling, and credit to him. He's done more there than most coaches ever have, and I like Mark Stoops. I have nothing against the guy. I enjoy hearing him talk. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's done as well as he possibly could there, but that's about what you're going to get. You know, you might get the occasional 10-win season, but this is pretty much it for Kentucky.
Yep, you just have a ceiling. It just is what it is. Well, let's talk a little basketball, but I do want to say I appreciate it. Adam and Titans YouTuber both had nice comments here. They said, I love listening to these guys. Always good stuff. Titan said, yeah, these guys are who I go to for volunteer talk. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody for listening. Seriously, it's the best. Comments have been killer all season long. And thank you for watching. Now let's talk a little Vol basketball right after I tell you about Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey. Nothing goes better with a Tennessee sports victory than a great whiskey. And I am talking specifically about Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those who make their own luck. There is a 4-year and an 8-year version of Rattle and Snap whiskey. Had both. They are both great. They go great in cocktails. Great neat in a glass, too. You're going to want to get your hands on some. They're in stores across the state of Tennessee, but they're also in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. Run, don't walk to get yourself some Rattle and Snap whiskey for those Tennessee sports victories, like the one we watched on Saturday over Kentucky, and like the one that we watched Tennessee basketball have on Sunday over Michigan State. Oh, and follow Rattle and Snap on Instagram at Rattle and Snap Whiskey. Thanks to them for helping out the boys. But Tennessee played this exhibition game. It was a charity game for Maui. Obviously, unbelievable wildfires in Maui that just mowed down an entire portion of that island. It was horrific. And this was a charity thing to support that, very much needed. And I thought that was great. And this was so cool. Like, the entire setup of this game, it was an exhibition game, but both teams played their real rosters. Tennessee was without Santiago Vescovi and without Zakai Ziegler. Zakai Ziegler still coming back from blowing out his knee. Santiago Vescovi, I believe his grandmother is ill, and he had to go back to Uruguay. So prayers to his family there. But Tennessee was without them. But Michigan State played their whole roster. They came out with the stars in this game, and it was rocking. It was a real road game, and just a super impressive thing. I thought it was amazing, and it's an amazing experience for both of those teams to in the preseason be able to play a real game against a real opponent and actually, like, feel pressure and just kind of gut it out in a game like that. I thought it was so cool. And Tennessee won. Tennessee squeaked it out. I believe 89-88 on a quite literal last second free throw from Justin Gainey. Did you get to watch this game? I know you were doing kids baseball practices and stuff, right?
Yeah, I was at a baseball tournament pretty much all day. Most of what I was watching was NFL on my iPad. I was kind of like you with you at the Kentucky game, catching some updates and kind of looking at everything after. And I did, like, my first question for you was, like, how much do you take away from a big win like that? Because that's a lot of points for Tennessee to give up considering their defense. And then without Vescovi and Ziegler playing, who is this team? Do you know yet? How does all that fit back in? There's a lot of questions that I have after a game like that, as far as, it's exhibition, but like you said, it's almost like a regular season kind of March, vibe that you get the juices going and you're playing in that game, you want to win. Like, you didn't just say, oh, it's an exhibition game, but you get in that kind of atmosphere. Competitors compete. Like, you want to go out there and win the game. So what was your big takeaway from that as far as how much stock we should put into it moving forward into the season?
I take away a lot. First of all, because again, I mean, Michigan State played their dudes. This was not them just putting the scrubs out there and it was just, oh, we're having fun and this is for charity. It was for charity and it was fun. And they did some cool things. Like they talked to Barnes and why am I blanking on Michigan State's coach? Tom Izzo. They talked to Tom Izzo during the game. And it was kind of funny. Like they brought in both of them at the same time and they like talked to each other during the game. It was kind of cool. I really, really liked that element of it. And it was interesting to hear kind of their thoughts. Obviously, they were not as intense as they would have been in a regular season or postseason game. But no, I mean, the entire thing, the place was sold out and it was absolutely raucous, packed to the hilt with crazy students right on top of you. I mean, Michigan State has a proper setup with their students. No offense to Danny White. I hate the setup with the students. Tennessee, put them next to the court. Really give them a chance to bear down on teams. I hate that. But I mean, it was the real deal, and Tennessee just flashed. Like came out, I believe, 17-1 early in the game. And obviously, folks are already bringing it up in the comments here. Mr. Jones and Elias all mentioned it. Dalton Connect. Oh, I had the box score here: 28 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and then he was a monster, and he threw down a monster jam right on somebody's head that was just beautiful. He was incredibly physical. He was great shooting the ball. And if that's any indication of what we're going to see going forward, I mean, he did it against Michigan State. It's not like he did it against some bum team like you're about to play in some of these other exhibitions or the one exhibition and then some of the warm-up games you have. No, I mean, this was real competition, and he clowned him on some of these plays. And then Justin Gainey, who's a coach's kid. I mean, Jordan Gainey. Justin Gainey is his dad. I mean, he's a coach's kid. And he 20 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds. He went off, and he was great from 3-point. And I think he'll be a killer spot up shooter. Connect will be too. Killer spot up shooter that could be facilitated by Sakai and by Santi.
Really missed last season.
They wanted Tyreek Key to be that all last season. They really wanted him to be, come in from off the bench and go make some buckets. And it just never came together. I think either one of those guys, well, Connect's going to be a starter. I think Gainey is probably going to come off the bench.
What do you think? Yeah, that's what I want to know. Like with Vescovy and then Ziegler, who sounds like he's much closer to playing than I ever thought he would be this early in the season. I mean, what do you think? How do you see the starting 5? What do you think is ideal? How does that? I mean, it's going to take a few games probably to shake out to figure out how, because Barnes hasn't really been able to play Ziegler in those spots yet. How do you think all that should shake out or does shake out?
You have a ton of options here. The depth on this basketball team is really, really impressive, especially if you end up bringing in this guy has apparently been kind of in the doghouse with Barnes, but like a DJ Jefferson. I mean, he didn't see supposedly an incredible physical specimen, but has had some, I don't know, behavioral stuff in the offseason. I don't know. Barnes kind of alluded to it in some of his press conferences. But like him, JP Estrella, another young guy that you're not sure exactly what you're going to see from him. But like some of those dudes, you can get all the way down to those levels and probably find some production. And then in that starting 5, it's really 7 or 8. I mean, just take your pick. Jonas Adu, Josiah Jordan-James, Santi, Zakai. I would assume that when they're all healthy, all of them will be starters. Connect probably the 5th there. Then Toby off the bench. Maybe because Toby didn't look as crisp and as developed as I thought he would. Toby Awaka. But it's a exhibition game to start the season off. You never really know. What did he put up? 8 points, 4 rebounds. Like it was just kind of But I think he'll come off the bench behind Adu. And you just work it down from there. I mean, DeLeone looked, or however you say his last name, DeLeone. not totally sure. Jemai Meshack, I mean, maybe Meshack started in that game. I'm not sure if it would be him, Josiah Jordan-James. You got a lot of options, and that's just the truth with this team. And I'm not sure exactly where Barnes is going to go, but you walked into Izzo's house and you didn't just beat him. You kind of just ran that game from front to back. Went wire to wire. They never trailed. The game, Michigan State tied the game with like 4 seconds left, and then fouled Justin Gainey by accident. And he made the free throw to win. But yeah, I was incredibly impressed. I thought it was an amazing warm up. I think it's so great that they got that experience to start, and I'm excited. I am very, very intrigued by what I saw. And all of a sudden, you had a bunch of like national pundits going, "Oh, Tennessee might be a Final Four team. Look at what they just did, going to Michigan State and this and that." So I don't know. We'll see. Could this be the one that Rick breaks through with?
No, I mean, maybe the talent's there. You got to keep everybody healthy and hope everybody gels the right way, because in college basketball, I've always thought some of the best teams, the depth is nice, but I think you really got to settle in on like a 8-9 man rotation at most. Like that always usually feels to me like the sweet spot where everybody kind of knows their role, knows when they're coming in, who they're coming in for, they're getting minutes. It can be tough when you're not getting minutes to play. That's what I'm interested to see how Barnes balances the playing time, because you are super deep and you do have these guys that you want to get in. Do you limit Josiah Jordan-James minutes a little bit to keep him healthier? Just there's a lot of options there, and I'm interested to see how it all shakes out. And it could take a few weeks, I think, for that to kind of happen.
I think it will. You got some tough games early on in the season. You got to go to North Carolina. You got to go to Wisconsin, I believe.
It's always a tough place to play.
The Maui Invitational is happening, even though that gym is in Lahaina, where all of that stuff happened. I don't know I believe that's happening. At least I haven't heard that it's canceled or anything. But
the Maui Invitational live from Santa Barbara or something.
Maybe, because that's what they did during COVID. I've never looked this up. What are they doing? Maybe it is just regular and it's just happening. Yeah, I mean, I don't see any like news about it being put off or even moved necessarily. But regardless. Oh, and yeah, Elias says they have Lenore Rhine tomorrow, which I believe is it's an exhibition. It's a warm up. It's not a regular season game. And then Tennessee Tech is the actual opening game. Probably should have looked that up before having this entire segment. But I don't know. I'm just really, really excited. Yeah, November 6th against Tennessee Tech is their first opening game there.
Oh, that Wisconsin game's the next Friday night, November 10th, 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a fun one.
Yeah,
you get a lot of good Friday night basketball games like that.
And I, of course, I'm a junkie. I'm a rare one in the Tennessee fan base. I'm like, give me whatever college basketball game you have, and I will sit down in front of my TV and watch it. But yeah, I'm just excited. I think it's a very interesting set of dudes that have a lot of talent and could probably really. I mean, you look at that; they're going to be able to put up a fight a bit against anybody, top to bottom, across the entire country. I don't think that you're going to find a team where you'll go, oh no, Tennessee couldn't at least have a chance to beat them. And that's all you could really ask for. And hopefully they really do bring it together, because I want it so badly. I want literally nothing more than a Final Four. That was always a talking point when I did radio. When you get deep into like the off season, they were like, which one would you rather have, a Final Four or a playoff for football? I'm a Final Four.
It's like the old Mount Rushmore conversation that you got to have every June or something.
I love football, and I want nothing more than to see them get back to the playoff. But I mean, we have never seen Tennessee basketball reach a Final Four. Please, before I go on the ground, Lord, please let me see a Final Four for the Tennessee Volunteers. And maybe this year is it. Hope springs eternal. Let's finish with some predictions, and we're gonna do, obviously we'll predict the Tennessee UConn game. Hopefully it's just a blowout, but we'll also predict there's some interesting games around the country that we'll talk about too in the final segment of the show. But first, I got to tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fphb.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. All right, so Tennessee, UConn, choose your number. Tennessee, I believe, is a 35-point favorite in this game. Heavy favorite. What say you, Zach? How do you think Tennessee's going to fare against Jim Mora's team, former UCLA coach Jim Mora?
Yeah, I think UConn plays tough. They play hard. I don't think they're going to be like Austin Peay, though. I don't think they're going to switch up their whole game plan to try to beat Tennessee. So I don't know. I think Tennessee covers. I think they'll win like 45-7. I think they'll might not really struggle in the first quarter, but it might take a couple of drives to really open things up. Then they'll just kind of put UConn away.
Yep. I think Tennessee will run all over UConn.
And that's why I don't. And that's why I don't think that the score will be like in the 60s. I think they'll run the ball a lot and maybe not use their tempo quite as much, because we have seen them several times this season not use tempo, or not as much tempo, or go quite as fast. They're pretty fast a few times against Kentucky, but I think they'll slow things down a little bit, get out of there. Might see Nico in that game. I think you do need to see Nico. Has nothing to do with this season, but I think you want some game reps for him. Obviously, the red shirt, I think he's going to be fine for that, but I don't think that red shirt will ever come into play. I think you hope that red shirt never ever comes into play. I think you hope he's so good that it's a no-brainer that he's going to the NFL after his red shirt sophomore season, if that's what it ends up being.
With this game, I mean, my number one hope is get up by 35 and give the people what they want. Let us see Nico. Let the man play, and let him play.
Yeah, he needs the reps. There's no substitute for game reps.
No, I mean, we talked about it earlier in this show. You cannot replicate having played in a live game, college football game. You just can't. And it shows with Joe Milton. The more he's played so far, he has progressed by playing in real games, and he's 29 years old. He's or whatever. I don't know. He's 23 or 4. And has been around college football for a really long time, and you can't replicate it. So get up 35-3 and put this man in the football game, and let him, and don't just put him in to hand the ball off. Let the man throw the football, and let us really see what he can do and get him reps for next year.
Yeah, those are going to be his receivers.
You need him.
Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod, probably Dante Thornton. Please. 1 more year of Squirrel White. These are the guys he's going to be throwing the ball to. He needs reps with him. Nathan Leacock, get him in some action. We haven't seen him yet. He hasn't taken a single snap yet this season. Let's see some of those young guys, get them some reps. Got to take care of business to make it happen, but I think Tennessee will.
I think they will too. You just look at the way that they disposed of UTSA, and you had that, like you said, that one weird game against Austin Peay where they just did such weird crackhead nonsense, and I don't think that'll happen. So I'll say 52-10. I'll say UConn. UConn scores 10. I'll give them that.
Fair enough. So I got 45-7. You got 52-10.
Yeah,
they cover.
So
we both think
we
they
both
cover.
We both say Tennessee covers, and I hope let 2 of those touchdowns be at the hands of Nico Iamaleava, or as Mr. Jones calls him, I am a believer.
I like it.
Okay, some of these other games, just before we bounce out of here, because this is what everybody kind of wants to talk about. Because if Georgia loses to Missouri and Tennessee beats Missouri, that game against Georgia will be for the SEC East. As crazy as that might be, and kind of as outside of a chance as it might be, that's real. That's a real thing. Do you think Missouri can do it? I believe it's at Georgia. It's in Athens. So
Yeah. I absolutely do not think that Missouri wins this game. I don't really think it ends up even being that close. Missouri hasn't really played like they've played well. Like I'll give it to Drinkwitz. He has them playing well and not losing some games that they've lost in the past. But their best win is Kentucky, Kansas State early in the season. Kentucky, South Carolina's trash. Florida, or they haven't played Florida. I'm sorry. They play them later in the season. Vanderbilt, not that great. Memphis, Middle Tennessee, South Dakota. Like you haven't played anybody that's a championship contender, that's a top 10 quality team, really. I don't. It's in Athens, like you said. It's what is it? It's the 3:30 game. We've seen what Athens is like in the 3:30 game, and Georgia fans, they haven't really had a lot of reason to get rowdy yet at all this season. And if, God forbid, Georgia is not number one in the first college football playoff rankings, which I've seen some people suggest that they might not be, just kind of like last season, right before Tennessee played Georgia, that's all the edge Kirby Smart needs to go out there and get these guys motivated to destroy Missouri. And there was that Missouri game last season where Georgia kind of looked, I mean, they beat them handedly, but they didn't really play that well. It was a weird game in Columbia. The vibe was weird. I don't know if that's motivation or not. Kirby finds every little thing he can. I think they blow him out. I don't think it's that close at all.
I do too. If it was at Missouri, maybe I think it's close because it was weird and close last year and just kind of strange. And Missouri is one of those places where like hopes and dreams go to die. Even
it's a weird place. The vibe's always weird. The camera angle's weird. I hate watching games there. I dread the one coming up that we have no clue what time it'll be at yet.
Dreams go to die there, even for people that play football for Missouri. I think Georgia's going to wipe the floor, and they're going to kick in the door, waving the 4-4. It's going to be a blowout. Otherwise, I believe you have, what are some of the other SEC games? Ole Miss, because this is Georgia's other opponent before they see Tennessee, is Ole Miss again in Athens. But
they play Texas A&M.
Texas A&M, and
in Oxford.
And this is really one that for Jimbo Fisher, I don't want to say that it's like it's kind of a save your butt game. Like this is one where if he wins it, you're going, okay, he's definitely back. For sure. He's coming back. He won that game and whatever. And there's been a lot of talk about Ole Miss. Oh man, this is going to be another 10-2 season for Kiffin, yada yada. Kind of like you said with Missouri. I mean, who you beating? Show me something on paper where you've really done something impressive. The one obviously would be LSU. Come from behind.
Defense is just absolutely garbage.
Terrible. Yeah. So I think Ole Miss wins that game, and then is that a nail in the coffin for Texas A&M? I mean,
it is a noon game, so but
it could be weird.
I don't think that comes into play. Texas A&M hasn't really played that great at home either, so I don't think the crowd is what's really causing them to lose games or win games. It could be close. You never know with Lane, man. He's such a wild card. He's had some good teams that just go out there and lay complete eggs sometimes, and then he show up and blow somebody out. I think Jimbo has no clue what he's doing. The Bobby Petrino experiment is not really working out the way he probably envisioned, but I think it's working out the way the rest of us kind of thought it would. But yeah, I think Ole Miss handles them pretty easily.
I do too. Oh, am I frozen? Can you see?
Yeah, you're just in that one. It's like you're looking at something intently.
Well, hopefully I don't look stupid on the other end because I
You,
looked
you can't see. You can't see
with
what.
this. So it's just completely frozen on mine and like the comments.
You
I
like
can't
you're
see.
about to Google something.
Well, I was looking at the schedules. At what else is happening on Saturday. Somebody JSR in the comments says, "Am I a Vols fan?" Is that a real question? Do I? I did go to Tennessee a couple of times and lived in Knoxville my entire life, and yes, the answer to that question is yes, I am. This is the last one. Then we'll bounce out of here, Zach. LSU, Alabama. And actually, I'm gonna, because I don't think I'll be able to end the stream because it's frozen. I'm gonna throw this to you, log out really quick, and then log back in. But I'll throw it to you. LSU, Alabama. Is Alabama finally gonna get got here? It's in Tuscaloosa. What do you think's gonna happen?
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one to pick. Like, I wouldn't place a wager on this game. I think it's it's a revenge game for LSU. I mean, for Alabama, obviously, after what happened last season, losing to LSU, that was kind of a factor in that Tennessee game. I do think it gave Alabama a bit of an edge. LSU's offense, like, I don't know if Alabama's going to be able to stop them or not. I tend to think the night game in Tuscaloosa, Alabama fans are getting kind of restless, and I think they're going to show up and make things a problem. And as bad as LSU's defense has been, I kind of think Alabama will get the job done. I don't think it's quite the end of Saban yet, so I think they'll take care of business. It all looks like we have lost Charlie, so he is gone. So check us out on YouTube. Check us out on all the socials. You know where to find us. YouTube.com. A to Z Sports live stream is. Oh, is there Charlie's back? But we can't hear him.
Just
he's
barely.
there. He's there.
This happened last time. This happened with me and Cromp. This is so annoying. I don't know what the deal is, but you were handling it well there. I could hear you're about to sign off. Who'd you say? Who's going to win?
You have to watch to find out. You got to watch the video to find out, okay. Charlie.
No, that's fair.
I think Alabama will take care of business despite LSU's high-powered offense. I think they'll handle it. I think the night game. I think that's what kind of puts it in Alabama's favor.
I agree.
And the revenge factor.
Yes. I mean, just it's kind of like with us this year. Alabama, it might be dicey for a minute there. LSU has a really good offense. But I just think ultimately Alabama has figured it out a little bit. Are they good enough to beat like a Georgia? Is anybody good enough to beat Georgia, frankly?
Is the winner of this game pretty much the winner of the SEC West? Is that how, or is Ole Miss still going to be a factor there?
Alabama would have to lose, wouldn't they?
I think so. Because their only loss is to Texas. So.
Yep, and they beat Ole Miss. Stupid Alabama. They won't, even when it feels like they're going to go away, they won't go away. Sad. That's Nick Saban for you. All right.
It is.
Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. Hopefully my computer won't freeze on the next show, but if it does, we'll work it out. Thank you for watching. Seriously, to everybody. Means the world. We can't thank you enough. You're the reason we get to do this show and that the show stays free and that we get sponsors for it. So y'all are amazing. Thanks again. Where follow us on everything, do all the stuff, A2Zsports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes. And we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys.